But working and being able to speak the same language as these people, I think is such an important skill, no matter what industry or field you're in, because even if you're not the subject matter expert in something, you have to be able to have conversations with people who are, and to know how they view things, and to see how not only can they help you with something, but how can I as a food scientist then help them back.
Welcome to episode 15 of the FoodGrads Podcast, the podcast where we explore careers in the food, beverage, and hospitality industries. I'm your host, Veronica, a molecular science graduate student and career partner with FoodGrads. On this week's podcast, I interviewed Ridhima Phukan, a product developer with Danone North America. Danone North America has many brands you might be familiar with, such as Activia, Vega, Stoke, and International Delight. Another cool fact is that they're the world's largest B-Corp, with over 45% of Danone's global sales covered by the B-Corp certification, which is really cool and one of the reasons that Ridhima chose to work there. In this episode, Ridhima talked about her role as a product developer in the ready-to-drink category, specifically in coffee and coffee creamers. She shares her experiences on how she made her time at the university a unique one by traveling the world on her co-ops. These co-ops led her to learn how to communicate with people of all different backgrounds. What's important is that you treat people with kindness, because at the end of the day, we're all people. So, with that, on to the show. Thanks for coming on the show. I'm excited. It's always a nice way to end my day with a nice conversation and learn more about the industry.
I agree. I'm excited to be here.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the company you work for and the different products that they have?
Sure. So Danone North America is the North American sector of Danone, which is a French company, and they are known mostly in the US for being Danone. And so in 2017, Danone bought White Wave Foods, which is they did products like Silk, So Delicious Dairy Free, Stoke Cold Brew, International Delight Iced Coffee. And when Danone bought White Wave, for a brief amount of time, they were called Danone Wave. And then they ended up changing their name once again to just reflect the parent company, which is Danone. And so now we are known as Danone North America. And I think some of the most recognizable products for those of us who grew up in the States, and I'm going to guess in Canada as well, are Danimals. I definitely ate a lot of Danimals yogurt growing up, and Activia yogurt is one of their more well-known brands. I would say on the coffee side, International Delight, the coffee creamer, is one of our most recognized brands, and then Stoke Cold Brew. And I personally work on both Stoke and IDIC, which is International Delight Iced Coffee.
I'm looking at the product line, because I'm in Canada, so things like Activia, Vega, Inactive, those are all products I eat on the regular. And honestly, I didn't even realize that they were a part of that company.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things is when people, if I tell them I work for the company that used to be called Dan, and they're like, well, I don't eat yogurt or something. I said, okay, are you vegan? Are you vegetarian? And so then when I bring up Silk or So Delicious Dairy Free, that ends up setting off a lot of light bulbs for people, because they might not think of, Dan Active or Activia as recognizable. But if you are a flexitarian, a vegetarian, a vegan, then you're probably very familiar with those other two brands. So I feel like it's cool because they scope so many different products. And I mean, in the food world in general, it's I feel like you have only a couple degrees of separation to any major brand, but I do definitely agree that Danone is one of the more recognizable ones, especially because Danimals has such a special place in my heart.
Personally, I was a kid who didn't really like yogurt growing up, and I still, to be honest, I'm not a big yogurt fan, but everyone around me had the Danimals, and I'm just huh.
Definitely a lunchbox staple in elementary school.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite flavor?
I don't remember which ones. I just remember there was one that was banana, and I can't remember if it was a strawberry banana or just banana, but there was definitely some sort of Danimals banana that I remember eating copious amounts of as a child. And I would say, as far as International Delight goes, the coffee creamer, when I had interviewed for the job, I admitted to my interviewer and my hiring manager that as a kid, my parents drink a lot of tea. They don't drink much coffee, but I somehow managed to convince my dad to buy International Delight French Vanilla, which is their most popular flavor. And I shamelessly put it into a bowl, poured it all out, stuck it in the freezer, and then ate it like ice cream. And looking back on that, it's kind of cringy, but as a 10-year-old, I had no shame and it was definitely worth it.
It's so funny how that experience that just so locked in your brain has led you to being at this company. So we should start talking about you and what do you do there and what's your role?
Sure. So I am an associate product developer for RTD, which is our ready to drink category. And within that category, the two coffee brands that I work on are Stoke Cold Brew and International Delight Iced Coffee. At this point, most of my projects have been for International Delight Iced Coffee, but I just got my first Stoke project, which I'm really excited about. I transitioned to the RTD team I think in June of this year. And so prior to that, I was working on the traditional creamers category. And so that was Bailey's creamer, Dunkin' creamer, and International Delight creamer. And I forgot to say this, but I started working here in October of last year, so October 2019. So I've been here for a little bit over a year now.
So when you say that you're working on these products, what are your duties that you be actively doing?
The duties that I actively have are any line extensions that we have. I am working with my manager to find different flavors and make different products. I feel like I'm trying to figure out what I can say without giving too much away.
No, of course, I don't want, no.
I'd say so. My projects kind of encompass a lot of cost savings work, so optimization of our products or our ingredients, and then the fun stuff, which is flavor work, so working with our flavor suppliers for new flavors that are emerging. One of the ones that I can talk about because it's been released, which was when I was still working on traditional creamers, was a limited time Cocoa Pebbles and Fruity Pebbles creamer. So that was when I was still working on creamers and not yet on RTD. But those are two that I'm especially excited about. The Fruity Pebbles creamer is one of those things that when I was tasked with this project, I was like, who in the world wants their coffee to taste like Fruity Pebbles? That is the weirdest thing. And then after formulating with our flavor suppliers, I am a believer. And so that is like one of my favorite products. Just say, don't knock it till you try it because it's amazing. And it's not on shelf yet. I think it'll be released early in the spring of 2021, but it is so good. And I just want everybody that's listening to know that even though it sounds strange, I promise you it is delicious.
We're going to have to try it. I mean, I'm on your board. I'm like, okay, that's not exactly the two combinations. I can maybe see one hint of note of like a fruity to go with a creamer, but to go like a Fruity Pebbles all-encompassing flavor, that's kind of crazy.
It is kind of crazy, and it definitely it tastes like the real thing. I feel like I was completely transported back to being in middle school, having a bowl of cereal, but in my coffee. So I am excited for you to try it when it comes out because it's weird, but it's delightful.
Hopefully it'll get released in Canada because I know that those types of limited flavors they generally don't come to Canada. So hopefully that might be the case, or I'll have to go to some special means to get it.
Well, I will help you with that if it isn't, because you're right, it might not be in Canada, but I know that Canada does have their own special flavors, but I'm not sure if the information has been released yet, so I don't want to say it, but when it comes out, I will let you know, because the limited time offer that one of my coworkers is working on for Canada is equally delicious.
Okay.
And not available in the US.
Okay, then that's the one I'm going to have to keep my eye on. So. Should I be worried that you're going to be sticking it in your freezer and eating it straight up?
You know, I might.
Hey, it sounds like if it's based off a cereal, it's not a far stretch, but
right. Make it Fruity Pebbles creamer ice cream.
Now that you've been working on the ready-to-drink coffees, now that is one brand that I have seen. The stock is actually pretty predominant in the supermarket, and again, that's another thing as being in Canada. I find that we have a more limited range of products, especially the packaging stands out very much on this, and it's very prominent in the supermarket.
I love Stoke, and I feel like I might be biased because I work for them, but when I say that it's the best cold brew that you can buy at a grocery store, I stand by that 100%. I think it's just so smooth and so easy to drink. And unfortunately, at this point, I can't take credit for any of the formulations that are on shelves that you're enjoying and I'm enjoying at home. Those are all my boss, Hannah. But I think it's a phenomenal product, and I'm so, so excited to be working on this team for that reason.
How has it been learning about coffee, and has there been anything that's been really interesting to you that you've been learning about it?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that I graduated from Drexel University in 2019 in June, and then I started working at Danone at the very end of October, basically November of 2019. And throughout my time in undergrad, I feel like I was very lucky to have been exposed to a lot of coffee stuff. I worked at La Colombe in Philadelphia in their flagship store in the bakery, but I befriended a lot of the baristas and even the like owners and CEOs, Todd and JP of La Colombe. I would see them on a daily basis essentially and would love just nerding out with them about coffee things. And in high school, I worked at Starbucks. And then in undergrad, I also did an exchange semester in Costa Rica and got to tour, I think 3 or 4 different coffee farms, including Starbucks' coffee farm and a couple of other really well-known ones. And so I would say that I didn't know so much about the technical aspects of formulating coffee in something that is then processed in a plant and then, put into a bottle and you can buy it at Target. But I was very interested in coffee because I drink so, so much of it that I definitely loved every opportunity that I got to talk about it and learn about it, be it different brew methods or different, I don't know, just like what is a Q grader and what is the coffee flavor wheel, and working now with the Specialty Coffee Association and attending their symposiums and their webinars. By no means an expert, but I feel like I've been kind of tangential to the coffee world for several years. And so I'm just really, really happy to be where I am right now because it's a product that I love to consume. And so learning about it doesn't really feel like work. And I feel really lucky to be able to say that just because, again, I've always been interested in coffee. And so I love coffee stuff. And while I might not be, the number one expert by any means, I'm just always so excited to hear from experts and just learn about what they're doing.
Oh, that is so cool.
It really is. I mean, I think it makes a really big difference when you're working on a product that you actually enjoy, just because, and I feel like that sounds so obvious, especially for food science. I mean, I would wager to say that most people who are in food science love food, but it's like, I love food and beverages, so, and especially coffee. So I'm like constantly pinching myself to just be so grateful for where I am right now because it's amazing.
Yeah, I feel like I'd be the same. I'm a tea drinker, so I feel like if I had the opportunity to work on like green tea type drinks all the time, I think that would be amazing.
It is, and I feel like for some people, they say like, oh, if you work on a product that you really like, it ends up ruining it for you. And I cannot say that I feel that way, and I can completely understand from tea too. I know, I'm blanking on it. Celestial Seasonings? I think that's what they're called. They are also in Colorado, and one of my coworkers used to work for them, and that's what she was talking about. She's like, I love tea, but I also love coffee, so I've got to see the best of both worlds.
And it's so cool because I know that you're into traveling, and it sounds like you were able to take those special experiences that you were traveling and trying the different coffees and you were able to translate that into your work, and I think that's pretty cool.
It is. I would say that a big chunk of the way that I did my undergraduate studies was based around how many countries can I live in and study in while also fulfilling all of the requirements for this degree.
Okay.
So I was able to do a study abroad in Paris, a study abroad in Costa Rica, and then I also did an internship in Germany, which was amazing. And I feel like I was really, really lucky to have an advisor who saw that those were my passions, and my faculty, but especially my advisor, because I feel like I would always go to her and say like, hey, Kelly, I kind of want to spend my fall semester senior year in Costa Rica. Like, can we do that? And she's like, yeah, I think you can. Show me what your plan is and I'll make sure that it works, kind of a thing. So I've been very, very fortunate to have people that recognize that this is such a big passion of mine, and to, it's not like they laid the path out for me, but they definitely supported me while I was trying to find those paths and those opportunities.
I'm going to dive deeper into that because I think that's really interesting, because when you think of someone having an internship, you think of it just for like the summer, but it sounds like you were able to sprinkle that out throughout your university days. And I wanted to know more. When you say your advisor, first of all, did you just mean like your academic advisor for the program?
Yes, so just my academic advisor for the program, but I was also very, very close with one of the faculty members who used to be the director of the program, and now I think he is just working as, he's a professor, so I guess that is his title. He's one of the professors, but he used to be the director, and he's a professor in the Department of Food and Hospitality Management at Drexel. And so he is another one of the mentors that I had who really saw how much these experiences meant to me and was very supportive. And in terms of you saying like internships, the program that I attended, we had a co-op system. And so my undergraduate degree took 5 years. And that's because my second, third, and fourth year, I was required to do 3 6-month internships. And so the first internship that I had done was at Campbell's Soup Company, or actually we called them co-ops. So the first co-op that I did was at Campbell's Soup Company. The second co-op during my third year that I did was in Germany at a vertical farming startup called Infarm. And it's really funny using the term startup for them now because they have absolutely exploded in the time that I used to work there. I feel like every time I go on Food and Tech Connect or different type of newsletter like that, I just see Infarm gets another 12 million euros of funding or another, like they are absolutely killing it. And I think it's so cool to have been able to start or just to see them from where they were when I worked for them in 2017 to now where they are in 2020, which was not that long ago, but they've just bloomed and exploded. And I think it's really cool. And then my third co-op was at Aramark in Philadelphia. But then honestly, throughout all of that time, even when I wasn't on co-ops, I was doing other internships, be it remote internships or in person. I worked in a ton of restaurants. I worked in a bakery. I really love working. And so I always sought out opportunities to be able to work and be more connected within the food industry, be it in the restaurant industry or, the CPG, FMCG industry as you and I know it.
You really took your university experience and you made it your own. And especially I think that's such a smart way of going about it in terms of trying to see different aspects of the industry. And really, it sounds like you explored so many things to see what you really liked, whether it be the front of the house to, like I say, the restaurant industry, but then working in the manufacturing goods. So you really have a perspective that's really unique because you can see at each step where a product could be. I'm assuming, especially in coffee with the product that you're working, it really can put into perspective what the customer wants.
Completely. And I would say, I'm no coffee expert. I'm not a culinary expert. Like I would never call myself a chef. I was a cook and I was a baker. But working and being able to speak the same language as these people, I think is such an important skill, no matter what industry or field you're in, because even if you're not the subject matter expert in something, you have to be able to have conversations with people who are, and to know how they view things and to see how not only can they help you with something, but how can I as a food scientist then help them back? And I would definitely say that I definitely took advantage of every single opportunity that I could in undergrad. And you know what, mind you, it's not like I had a perfect GPA by any means. And I think that I was completely okay with not having a 4.0 because of all of the extracurricular things that I was involved in that gave me such an amazing experience. And especially something like studying abroad in Costa Rica and in France and in Germany. I mean, seeing different food cultures is also really cool. And being in a really global organization like Danone now, it's awesome because some of my coworkers are from different countries and I feel like I can relate to them about foods that they used to eat or coffee drinks that they had in their home countries versus how different it is in the States and whatnot.
That's lovely. And I love, that's the thing about food, that it's a very global thing and everyone has, every country, every culture, even within the same country, there's like special regional type cuisines, and to be able to to share that with others. I think that is exciting.
I agree with you completely. And it's cool because my degree was actually not food science, it's culinary science. And so a lot of the classes that I had to take were very food science oriented, be it food analysis or food chemistry or food engineering. But then that was also coupled with classes like culture and gastronomy and American regional cuisine and patisserie 1 and 2. And I really loved my time at Drexel because I wanted to be able to cook a lot, but then I also wanted to have a solid foundation in the scientific aspects and applications. And I feel like I really got that during my time at Drexel.
That's really unique. And I also wanted to circle back when you were talking about communicating with, the different types of people, and that these experiences did help you learn. And I was curious about, I wouldn't say advice, but is there something that you could share about what you've learned about being able to talk to different people, and how do you come to people when you're not necessarily the expert?
I think the best way of going about situations like that is, and I think this sounds so corny and cliche, but I really stand by it, is just recognizing that whoever this person is, even if they are someone like a Harold McGee, who is so well known for his book on food and cooking, at the end of the day, these people are people, and they are normal people with normal lives and normal problems. And I think it's really easy to get intimidated by the fact that they might be experts or world-renowned chefs and things like that. But I think that if you approach them as people first and foremost and just try to have a conversation with them, and even if it's not about food, even if you're asking them like, what's your favorite part of living in Copenhagen after having been in restaurants in Brooklyn for your whole life, kind of a thing. I think it's really important to recognize that every conversation that you have doesn't need to be a transaction, and there doesn't need to be some sort of end goal or something that you get out of it. I think it's more than enough to just meet with someone and learn from them and be really present when you're talking to them, because I think it's really obvious if it's like if you're just asking someone for something because you want them to help you. And there are instances like that for sure where you need help, but I just feel like you have to remember that this is still a person, and they're not a dollar sign, they're not a product, they are a person, and whatever help that they could offer you, they will only want to offer you if you're kind and genuine and honest with how you speak to them.
Funny that you say that, because the person that you were talking about, Harold McGee, and exactly what you were saying about thinking about people as people. I was thinking about this exact thing when I was in the lab today. And I was thinking about, because I'm doing this podcast and that, and do I want to get caught up in job titles and all that? Like, some of these people could be so, and I know that I'm talking about myself here, but I was like, you know what, at the end of the day, they're just people. They have lives, they go home, they probably cook a meal with their family, and they go to their job, and then they come home. And it doesn't have to be, if you start focusing on the stories of the people and just who they are, you don't need to get caught up in all this other stuff. I mean, like you said, of course, if you're working with a company to maybe get a flavor and you just met this person, well, of course, that might be a transactional relation. But, if you're touching up meeting someone in the food industry, you could just talk about their families, and who knows what that could lead to. It doesn't have to be this endpoint or anything.
I agree with that so much. And I think especially right now with the scenario, with the reality of COVID and so much of the stuff that we do that's now remote, I feel like there used to be a time where, I don't know, talking to a supplier on the phone where you're asking them like kind of small talk before, as you're waiting for other people to get into the meeting or something. I feel like that type of small talk now is more important than ever, because we're all dealing with such a crazy world. And hearing one of my suppliers tell me like, oh, I think I'm going to move from California to Texas because I kind of want to be somewhere closer to my family or whatever, stuff like that. It's really nice because, like you just said, it's been so nice. Like I said, I broke my leg in February, just having suppliers ask me like, oh, by the way, like, how is your leg? Like, how is everything going? Something like that. It just shows so much when you can see that people are really listening to what you're saying, and be it one of the suppliers that I work with asking me about something, or me remembering something that they said. It makes a huge difference. And I think with the scenario, or with the reality of COVID, it's more important than ever. it was always important, but now it's just even more important to remember that everybody is human and we're all dealing with a crazy, crazy environment and crazy time. And it's okay if half of your meeting, ended up talking about your pets. It's fine. I miss those conversations.
Yeah, I agree. And that's something that I think might actually be one of the positives that are coming out of COVID is I do feel that people are way more understanding about, of course, there's a level of professionalism that you need to bring to, a meeting and all that. But at the same time, there's more freedom to be a little more open with things without it being thought of as being inappropriate. And it just
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon right now for you to be in a meeting or for me to be in a meeting with someone and hear a dog going berserk in the background or a baby crying or something. It's just like such a big reminder that we're all kind of trying to figure this out at the same time. And I don't know anyone that feels like they have everything under control, and that's okay.
The other day I closed the door and my cat decided that he was going to bust down the door.
Of course.
There's banging and I'm like, okay.
Of course, right? Especially when it's like a super important meeting, that's when something decides to fall off your bookshelf and make a huge noise or something. That's just always how it goes.
Exactly. And I'll be really interested about when things do remotely, more people start going back into the office, or if, that's another discussion, but I do think that people will be back. How will those change our relationships and how will we be more open with one another?
Well, so for us specifically within my department at Danone, we have been back in the office, I personally since mid-August, but I think that the office was open sometime in July or so. And we product developers and our managers are on a rotational schedule. So we have an A-B rotation. So this week, for example, is B week. And so I'm not allowed in the office because I'm an A team member. And it's funny because I feel like being in the office and seeing coworkers, even if it's just for a few minutes, it's so nice. It feels so normal sometimes, just being able to be in the lab and then ask somebody from a different team, how are you? How have things been going, kind of a thing. And I feel really glad that we have the opportunity every other week to go in when we want to or need to, because food science is the type of thing that there is a lot that you can do remotely, but you can't really do everything remotely. And so I'm glad that we have the flexibility to do both.
Yeah, I agree. And I could imagine as well, when it comes to, developing products, like you just said, you could do a lot at home, but sometimes the ideas that end up getting pushed forward come from that small chat conversation that just isn't initiated from home.
Exactly. There's so much collaboration that you can find ways of going about it in these crazy times through Zoom and WebEx and whatnot, but it'll never be the same as being face-to-face. So I'm really glad that the weeks that I am in the office, I'm still able to bounce ideas off of my coworkers, especially during tastings and stuff, and have their feedback right away for the exact reason that you gave. There's just so many ideas that happen and come about just because you're talking to someone about something and then that sparks something in their mind and they bring it up and then you take that feedback and you're like, oh my goodness, what if we make XYZ? And so that's definitely something that in a world where this situation ends, I hope, that I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, totally. That's something that you're looking forward to, though. What do you like about your job?
What I like about my job is I wanted to work at a company that really practices what they preach. And I feel that when I was on my job search, I really wanted a company whose values aligned with mine. And Danone North America is actually the largest benefit corporation in the world. And because of our benefit corporation status, that means that we are held to higher standards for sustainability, for equality in terms of parental leave benefits for both paternity leave and maternity leave, in terms of pay equality and just environmental stewardship and so many other things that are really important to me. And so I wanted to be at a company where other people felt like that's important and not just something to put on the website that looks good for marketing, but that's actually something that we're all striving to create. And so Danone's motto is like one planet, one health, and just recognizing that we all have such a huge role to play in creating a better future and a better food system for everyone to enjoy for generations to come that is more regenerative. There's a ton of people within Danone who are working on soil health and regenerative, this word trips me up every time, regenerative agriculture and water use and decreasing water use and sustainable packaging. And that's kind of what I love about my job, honestly, is the people who work here have similar values. And I think it's a really special place to be because of that value and importance.
I had no idea that they were Canada's largest B-Corp. And that's amazing, because I know that being able to work at a company that follows your values, of course, that's going to be the reason why you want to come into work, regardless of the role that you're doing, because you're going to want to do good. But I think that's so cool that you have people like looking at the soil, and that's awesome.
It is. And I mean, to know, and it's really funny because right now we are the world's largest B Corp, but the B Corp team specifically always says all the time that we are more than happy to give that candle to someone else and pass that torch on, like in a sense. And I think it's such an amazing motto, basically, that while yes, we might be the largest B Corp in the world today, we don't want to be the largest B Corp forever, because we want other companies to also see the importance and take that responsibility, basically. And I feel like that is such an interesting perspective to have, because it would be one thing to say, like, you know, we're the largest B Corp in the world, we want to be that way forever. But instead, there's this mentality of, yeah, sure, we are right now, but we're hoping that that just means that we can pave the way forward for other companies to follow suit.
That's an amazing sentiment, because again, you know, you think of it being this huge consumer product brand, and, you know, they're a lot of companies, they want to be the best at they want to be the best, they want to be the largest, most profit, like all those types of things. But coming from like, that's a true human quality that they just want it to be not just them. I bet if anything, they'd want everyone to be B Corp and then have that for everyone.
Honestly, yeah, I bet if I asked my coworker, my colleague Catherine, she would probably say that. She's the head of B Corp for us. And I agree. I thought that when I first heard her say that, that was really eye-opening for me, and kind of just reconfirmed why I'm so grateful and happy to be here, because it really is the people. And again, I feel like it's just so cliche to say something like that, but I'm happy to be in a company, and I would almost wager to say like community, where I really mean it. Like, I'm happy to be here because the people are amazing.
It's definitely going to change how I perceive like what I want to purchase in the grocery store. Like I said, I love Activia, but I had no idea. It's not, if I'm mistaken, like I don't even see that on the packaging. So like that's something I'm happy that I'm going to be able to share on this podcast for other listeners to learn about this.
I am with you on that. I wish that it could be like big letters everywhere on all of our products. And I think it is. It's just like, sometimes on the back of the package and whatnot. And people aren't always looking at that stuff. But yeah, I feel like it is something that we're very proud of, and I love spreading the word.
Yeah, especially for when, you know, you have established products. You know, if a customer is already really into your product, and, you know, you go to the grocery store and you like a certain yogurt, you keep buying the same yogurt usually, and you don't start looking around the package. You really only look for the flavors if you're like a dedicated person. So like, again, this is new for me. So I'm so happy that we can share this.
Yay, I'm glad.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to bring it back to you, because we did talk about your experiences being in your food science degree, but we never really talked about like your story, and like, why did you decide to go into culinary science, and how did that lead you to your current role?
So I honestly love telling this story. When I was a junior in high school studying for my SATs and all of that fun stuff, I had a sleepover with a friend of mine who was on the cross-country team, and she was a year above me. So she was a senior, and she was doing all of her college applications and all of that fun stuff that comes with senior year. And so we were having dinner at her house during a sleepover, and her mom asked me, so Ridhima, you know, what do you want to do when you go to college? Like, what do you think you want to go to school for? And I responded to her that, honestly, I don't know. I really like chemistry, but I don't want to live in a lab forever because that seems a little bit dull. But I also love cooking, but I don't really love the lifestyle that chefs have. And I really respect that line of work, but I just don't think it's for me. And she responded with, why don't you study food science? And I kid you not, I started laughing because I thought she was making fun of me. I'm like, yeah, right, food science. Okay, let's just take the two words that I said, food and science, and smush them together and pretend that that's a field. And she goes, I don't know why you're laughing. I'm a food scientist, and my husband, my friend's dad, is a flavor chemist. And I think my jaw dropped. And I was like, what? That's a field? That's something that people do? And she was telling me how the products that they work on, she's like, yeah, have you ever had Faya Greek yogurt? And I said, of course. She said, well, my husband makes the flavors. And like she just mentioned, this is one of the projects that they had both worked on. She said the strawberry flavor, he made the strawberry flavor and I made the fruit prep and my colleague made the yogurt itself. And that was mind-blowing. I mean, I never thought about the people who are actually behind the scenes making the products that we see on our store shelves. That was so beyond my scope of understanding. And so I basically just asked her, I was like, holy crap, that is so cool. Where did you go to school for it? She said Drexel. And I was like, all right, cool. I think I'm going to go there. So that's basically how it happened.
It's funny how one conversation can really change the trajectory of where you want to go.
Well, it's huge. I mean, I just feel like in high school, sure, I knew what chemistry was and I know what culinary arts is, but I had never known anything about food science. And it kind of got to the point that when I would tell my teachers in high school, I think I want to go to school for food science, it was honestly me telling them what the industry was because so many of them had never heard of it either.
It's amazing how there's these well-established programs at these universities, but then at the high school level, it's like so many people just don't know. And I don't know why there's such this disconnect when there's so many well-established places that offer food science.
I agree. And to be honest, it's not like Drexel is one of the most well-known. I would say within the US, like Penn State, University of Wisconsin, even Delaware, all have very, very huge programs. And I didn't apply to any of those only because, like you said, that one conversation can change the entire trajectory. And I knew that I wanted to go to a city school. And so when my friend's mom mentioned Drexel, it knocked off every single box on my checklist. I mean, it was in the city of Philadelphia. I love Philadelphia. It was a food science program that had a huge culinary component, which is why it's called culinary science. So that was a huge selling point. I just felt like it was so serendipitous and I wouldn't have traded it for the world.
I love that. I do. And it's always nice, especially as a high schooler, to know what you're going to be doing after. That takes a lot of stress off.
It's funny too, though, because I can definitely say that my parents, especially my dad, were really worried because they felt like I should go study chemistry somewhere or study something a little bit more general like biology and then eventually go into something more specific like food science. And it was one of those moments where, I know that my parents care about me and that they have my best interest at heart. But at that point, I just decided, why would I want to study something other than what I now know I want to study kind of a thing? And I get the desire to be more well-rounded. But once you enter the food industry, you even see that there are so many ways to get super, super technical and really, really delve into one area if you want to. But if you want to stay a little bit more broad and be a product developer that works on a ton of different products, you can do that too. And so it was something that I feel like my parents were kind of scared. They're like, we're going to study what, where, kind of a thing. And now, of course, years and years later, they are they were always supportive, but they had that kind of healthy skepticism that parents often do. And now I think they recognize that I made the right choice for me and they feel like it was definitely the best choice, as do I.
It's nice to hear that. And especially as well with food science programs, like you would definitely know, I know you did the culinary science, but it's almost like it's so broad, but it's specified enough that coming out of the degree, you can do so many different things within the food industry. But then the sciences that you're learning going into these programs, it's so diverse. Like you're learning about biochemistry, you're learning about, traditional chemistry, the chemistry
organic chemistry. Not my favorite, but yes, learned it.
But exactly, like you're still being exposed to all these concepts that you might not even, like maybe the generalized chemistry program, like the one that I went through, arguably it's much more diverse and like you can look at the different fields. But with something like a food science degree, it's so broad, but it's so specified that you're still getting that applied science understanding.
Definitely. And I mean, I feel like there is absolutely nothing wrong with the path that my dad had envisioned for me in terms of doing something like chemistry and then getting more specific in a master's or something. I just felt like I didn't want to do that. And that's the cool thing about the food industry also, is there are a lot of kind of twists and turns in a good way in terms of how people get to where they are. I mean, some of the coworkers that I have came from our pilot plant and are now product developers, or they were chefs in their quote unquote past lives and now they are managers, or they work in sensory, but they actually came from working on like deodorant and now they're working on food sensory applications. So it's such a cool field and industry because it's not like you have to stick to one thing. There are so many options out there. And I feel like one of the best ways of finding out those options, and I know this is one of the questions that you had submitted, was just in terms of what advice to give someone who doesn't really know what they want to do yet. One of the favorite things that I love doing and cannot recommend enough is just reaching out to people on LinkedIn. And I would say if you are going to request someone on LinkedIn, unless you know them personally, never ever just submit the ad as a connection kind of a thing. You always want to add a personal touch. And one of the things that I really love doing, and especially in undergrad, and even now sometimes, is just scheduling one-on-one informational interviews with people, especially people in different fields who I've really looked up to at different companies like Pepsi or wherever else, just sending them an email and saying like, hi, my name is Ridhima, and at this point I was still an undergrad, and I would say, I am a senior at Drexel in culinary science. I saw that you work at XYZ company as an XYZ person. Do you have any time in the next 2 weeks to potentially have a 30-minute informational interview? I would love to hear about what you do and how you got there. And I will say that I feel like every single time I reached out to someone with that type of a message, even if they didn't respond right away, they were always willing. And some people, might not have the time in their schedules for a phone call, but they would provide me with their email addresses and say, ask me whatever questions you have but via email. Or it's just like people love talking about themselves, and that's just a universal truth. But I feel like people who are successful in whatever way that you want to refer to success as, I think that people tend to like to pay it forward and help others, especially students, but it doesn't even have to be a student. And this is kind of why I brought up the not being transactional in your approach, because if you reach out to someone and you say to them, hi, my name is Ridhima, I'm looking for an internship next year, how can you help me? If you're the one receiving that kind of message on LinkedIn, would you want to talk to you? Probably not. That sounds so rigid and fake almost, like I'm a person, I have something to say. I'm not here to just like necessarily help you find a job kind of a thing. And the nice thing is there were so many people who, while I had these very natural conversations of just like, what do you do? Where did you study? What advice do you have kind of a thing? Eventually it would come down to they are asking me like, oh, did you know that our company has an internship program? You should apply kind of a thing. And even for the people where that didn't happen, I am so grateful to the amount of people that I reached out to like this, because when it came time for me interviewing for the current job that I have at Danone, I knew in my heart, I was like, this is the job that I want, and I want it so bad. And so I would reach out to some of the people who I'd reached out to prior, and I asked them, I said, hey, thank you so much for all that amazing advice you gave me. I just want to let you know I'm basically interviewing for my dream job. This is the position. What do you think I should ask my interviewers? Like, what are good ways for me to show that I am so interested in this role and I want it so badly, but showing that I've done my research? And again, every single person that I had asked for help with that, they all responded and gave me amazing advice. And now I am where I am, and it was so, so nice to have that help and just ask people like, okay, so one of my interviewers is the hiring manager. What should I ask him? Versus somebody else that I'm being interviewed by is somebody who I might not actually work with on a day-to-day basis, but would probably be good to learn more about the company from. What should I ask her? And just stuff like that.
That advice is so sound, and it's so good because it's coming from a personal experience, and you're showing the interest of you want this as your dream job, but you're not saying, hey, this is my dream job. I barely talk to you, but can you put my resume forward? It wasn't coming from that. It was coming from, I think that someone if you're thinking about them in the position. And I think that's a key thing that you said, is to think about, if you were to receive this message, how would you feel about it? But getting a message, oh, I had this really cool like student, or even young person, or whoever's applying for this job, and they were asking me about how to ask questions in an interview. It wouldn't take them too long to give you an answer for. It seems so genuine, and it doesn't seem like you're just trying to get a job. Like you're trying to gauge this place because you want to be the best for them.
Exactly. And you're totally right. It's just so important to recognize that people are people and you have to treat them that way. And it's, such a funny way of bringing the golden rule type thing full circle. But people are really helpful if you are willing to be kind and genuine in your approaches with them. At least that's what I have found. And for instance, even when I got the internship in Berlin, at that point, I had never been to Germany. I think I had just read that Berlin was a really good place to work at a startup. And coming from the experience that I had the summer before at Campbell's Soup, I was like, cool, I would love to have a much smaller experience. And I remember I had just Googled Berlin food startups and contacted every single company that came up. And I think of the top 10 food startups in Berlin, I emailed all 10 of them, and one of them responded, and it ended up being the company that I worked for. And so again, I just kind of said to them, like, I am a culinary science student. I know very little about vertical farming, but I know that I could help you in this way. Would you ever consider having an intern from the United States? And I think I was a little bit more eloquent than that, but that was the basic gist of me asking them, and they did offer me an internship position. And I still talk to my colleagues from there to this day. I feel like every single time I see something on LinkedIn, or like I said, Food and Tech Connect, I'll email or just ping them on LinkedIn and just say, holy crap, this is so cool, way to go. And I'm not trying to get a job from them right now. I'm just reaching out to an old friend or coworker. It's just nice to remember that these people are people.
I think that's a great messaging, and I'm going to leave it there because I think that you've said everything that a student should come, because at the end of the day, we're all human, and you want to treat everyone nicely, you want to treat them with respect, with kindness, and that should translate to all your interactions in the business world and professional world and all that stuff as well.
Definitely. I could not agree with that more.
The last question, though, I'm going to ask before we end it off here is, where can people find or connect with you?
I would say LinkedIn is best. I have been taking a kind of like social media hiatus during COVID, but I'm still fairly active on LinkedIn, so that's probably the best place to find me.
Okay, so I'll link it in the show notes, and if anyone does try to connect with you, you guys got to make sure that you're putting in a nice, considerate message.
You better send a real note. Exactly, that just proves that you've listened to what I said.
Hey, perfect connection. I really enjoyed your advice on the podcast. Let's connect. Well, maybe more eloquent than that, but we got you.
Beautiful. Looking forward to exactly those types of messages. And honestly, for people, like, I am so happy to answer any questions that people might have, even outside of the scope of this podcast, just because I know that right now with COVID, things are especially difficult, that I am so grateful to the people who helped me that I would love to be able to pay it forward to others as well.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I really loved this conversation. And you know what? For me, it was just a nice chat to, learn more about everything and as well, like, connect. That was episode 15 of the FoodGrads Podcast. All the notes to this podcast can be found on the FoodGrads website by clicking on the podcast tab on the homepage. There, you can find the notes to any past or future episodes. If you enjoyed this episode, then consider leaving a review on wherever you get your podcasts. There's so many of them out there, and we would really appreciate it because we want to get the word out to everyone. Go check out the blog, and you'll notice that I actually have a new blog post on the chemistry of water. I thought it'd be fun to start blogging again by sharing some of the science behind my master's thesis. I love what I do, and I want to share it with others, and it might be a benefit to me because, after all, they do say the best way to learn is to teach others. So that's it for this week's podcast episode. Thank you everyone so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Testing. Okay, just quickly, let's get this done. Another cool fact is that they're the world's largest B Corp, with over 45% of Danone's global sales covered by the B Corp certification, which is really cool and one of the reasons that Ridhima chose to work there.